I'm 38 years old, and my wife and I have a _year-old daughter. Yesterday was my wife's birthday, and I had planned to surprise her. I took off early, picked up some flowers, thinking it would be a special day for us. Little did I know I was in for a shock. When I walked in the front door, I was met with a mess clothes scattered from the entrance all the way to our bedroom. Confused at first, I soon realized they were a mix of men's and women's clothes. It hit me I had walked into my cheating wife's night of passion. I couldn't process what I was seeing. I heard the moans and screams of passion. It was a numbing experience. They were still at it. I took a step back, found my way to the living room, and sat on the edge of the couch, my mind racing. That's when I noticed his stuff lying around. In a fit of anger and despair, I grabbed all of his clothes and took them out to the driveway. I dumped charcoal starter fluid on them and set fire to his belongings. The only thing spared was his keys and phone. As I walked back into the house, my wife, wrapped in a towel, was standing there with a bewildered expression. I wished her a happy birthday, but she just started crying. The other guy emerged in a towel as well. I handed him his keys and phone and told him to get out. My wife said, "Please don't do this to him. I could not stand my wife defending another man. What about defending our marriage?" Amidst the chaos, my wife insisted on getting him a pair of trousers. I made it clear that he has touched more than he should have, and now he is not getting anything from me. Tempers flared, and he tried to grab my arm. I was more than happy I started punching him in the face. He was soon on the ground, and both his eyes were now bloodshot. Soon they'd be black. I kicked my wife out on her birthday. She's now staying with her mom, who unfortunately has a history of cheating too. Since Tuesday I haven't spoken to her much, but she's been blowing up mine and our daughter's phones. I had to break the news to our daughter about her mother's infidelity, trying not to go into too much detail but making it clear that she cheated. Our daughter is heartbroken and angry. I hired a lawyer this morning, and today I finally texted my wife. I told her about the lawyer and said we could meet up later so she could try to explain herself. I know it might be a bad idea, but I need answers. I'm struggling to think clearly right now. When I found them, they were in the shower, unaware that I was standing at the doorway. The steam covered them, but I could hear their laughter and giggling about the intimacy they just shared. It was painful. I texted my wife, telling her I didn't want to meet up today. I can't stand to look at her. Yet she started blowing up my phone, swearing that she can change, claiming she's already gotten rid of the guy. I told her not to delete anything from her phone. I want to see all her texts and messages. We eventually met at a local coffee shop. I recorded the conversation with my phone on the table. She wanted to know why I was doing this. Frankly, I just didn't trust her anymore. She started saying she wanted to save our marriage, that she'd given up on it, but now she wanted to be the wife and mother our daughter needs. I told her it's a little late. She asked if I was ready to throw away 16 years of marriage, and I threw it back at her, saying it wasn't me who cheated. I asked her who the guy was. He's apparently a stay-at-home dad from one of the homeschooling programs. I told her she had to contact his wife if there's any hope for our future. I asked how long it had been going on. She said 2 months. She claims to feel guilty and remorseful. I told her it was for getting caught, not for what she did, as she had no intentions of stopping. She cried, saying she knew it was wrong and she was going to stop. I called her out on lying. I asked for her phone, and surprisingly she hadn't deleted anything. She showed me the progression of their texts and explained how many times they met up. I asked her why she could do certain things with him but not for me. She said she didn't want me to look down on her for her desires as a wife and mother. I threw it back at her, saying I wouldn't have asked if I would judge her. She showed me the text where she told the guy she couldn't have contact with him anymore. She wanted me to tell our daughter to contact her, but I refused. I won't force our daughter to talk to her. I also told her she needs to get into counseling to fix herself because something is seriously damaged inside her. After our meeting, I contacted a lawyer and started divorce proceedings. I've reached a point where I just can't bear the weight of the betrayal any longer. After she broke down in tears, I gave her a deadline of 60 days before the separation papers were finalized. I needed to see genuine remorse for the pain she caused both me and our daughter, not just the shame of getting caught. I suggested she move in with her mother for now until we figure out what lies ahead. I insisted she'd get an STD test, and despite the separation, I want to know her whereabouts at all times. I asked for a tracking device on her phone and regular check-ins. The trust is shattered, and I made it clear that if she even whispers to the person she cheated with, consequences will follow. I'm questioning the entire foundation of our marriage, wondering if she could have been unfaithful all along. She claimed it was a one-time affair, but I expressed my disbelief. If she could do it once, the fear is she could do it again. The situation escalated further when my wife took a bunch of pills on Christmas Eve, leading to an emergency room visit. Now we're all back under the same roof. I had a conversation with her, informing her that our marriage is over. Her selfish behavior, especially on Christmas Eve, traumatized our daughter. It's become clear that I can't continue living with this narcissistic behavior. In our conversation, I reiterated that the damage to our family is irreversible. She kept expressing a desire for us, but I called it out, saying she'd still be with the other person if she hadn't been caught. I've realized I no longer feel anything for her. Whether it's the trauma or something else, all I can think about is moving forward without her. She insisted she doesn't know what to do, but I reminded her that she should have considered the consequences before engaging in the affair. I packed up all her belongings and placed them on the back porch for her to retrieve. I also decided to talk to the other person's wife, feeling the need to address the situation on that front as well. The path ahead is uncertain, but the decision to end the marriage seems inevitable at this point. I'm beyond caring about what anyone thinks or says. I've made up my mind. I'm done. My focus is solely on moving forward with my daughter. My soon-to-be ex-wife is still out of the picture, and I've chosen the no-contact route with her. While my daughter has the option to talk to her, she hasn't shown any interest so far. From what I gather, my soon-to-be ex-wife spends most days holed up in her room at my mother-in-law's place. She seems to have been abandoned by everyone who knows her. While I don't feel sorry for her, there's a sense of pity for the situation she's in. However, last night I had a change of heart. I decided to visit the other betrayed spouse and share the packet of information I had gathered about the affair. I explained everything I could personally to her. She asked if I was the one who confronted her husband, and I didn't hesitate to admit it. Apparently he had spun a story about a road rage incident when he came home with a black eye in his gym clothes. We spent about 40 minutes talking, and I laid out the extent of the betrayal these two had committed behind our backs. While I was there, she called him and told him not to come home because she knew everything. This morning she reached out to me, and we've decided to meet again to go over the evidence, possibly involving our divorce attorneys, since it seems she's heading in that direction too. I've unblocked my wife for divorce-related communication. We've agreed on an uncontested divorce, splitting assets 60-40 in my favor. I'll be keeping the house, and for now, I have full custody of our daughter. Verbal communication with my wife is minimal and mostly revolves around our daughter and the divorce. She's tried to bring up the affair a couple of times, but I've shut her down. I confirmed that she ended things with the other guy, as there was some information shared between me and the other betrayed spouse that she doesn't know about. In less than 6 weeks, I should be happily divorced. I found comfort in spending time with the other betrayed spouse, although I do not want to date her as of now, but she seems to be an amazing woman. I wonder why the other guy cheated on her. It has been 6 months now, and I am a free man. Maria, the other guy's wife, now is dating me. We have been spending time together and taking it easy with each other. Hopefully things will be good in the future. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help. Second story. Fiancé says she wants a no-kids wedding, so I'm not allowed to bring my daughter. But when I get to the venue, I see both of her kids and her nieces all dressed up. At that moment, I laugh in her face and tell her this: I proposed to my fiancé 6 months ago. We had dated for about a year, and I thought it was about time. I didn't want a big wedding. I thought it would be an unnecessary waste of money. She wanted a big one, though, and she wanted me to pay for it. I told her no, as I couldn't afford it. We also had 3 kids. I had a daughter, and she had 2 daughters. My baby was the youngest, so we had to be careful with our finances. I could tell she didn't like it. Eventually, we both compromised. I agreed on spending a little more, and she agreed on splitting the wedding costs, as they should be. She said she wanted a no-kids wedding, and I hesitated. I wanted my daughter there, but she seemed persistent about that rule, so I relented. I asked her to bond more with my daughter. They both were comfortable with each other, but they weren't that close. She said they would bond with time, and I believed her. I knew it would take time to develop a relationship. I had seen her with my soon-to-be stepdaughters, and I was mesmerized by their bond. It was beautiful, and I wished my daughter could experience such a thing too. This was what led me to propose. As time passed, I could see that she was stressed out, so I tried to pamper and relax her as much as I could. I knew wedding preparations were stressful. I was present for everything, and I was part of every decision. I didn't force her to spend time with my daughter, but I did mention it a couple of times. I wanted to give them both space to form their relationship naturally. I did send my daughter to her a few times, but she usually ignored her, telling her she was busy or making up an excuse. I didn't like it. I could see she spent time with her daughters, and now that we were going to be a family, she should make an effort too. 3 months into the engagement, I brought it up. I told her how I felt and explained that my daughter was an important part of my life. Now that she and I were engaged, I expected her to make an effort toward my daughter. I asked her how she would feel if I ignored her daughters and didn't have much contact with them. That seemed to give her the message. She apologized and told me she would start putting in more effort. 2 months passed and she had taken my daughter out 2 or 3 times. It wasn't much, but at least she was trying. I understood that the wedding was nearing, and she had other things to do too. My daughter was really sad that she couldn't come to the wedding. I felt really bad. I spoke to my fiancé about it and asked her to at least let our kids be there. After all, they were our family. She said it would be too stressful, and she didn't want them to make a mess. I tried explaining it to my daughter, but she was hurt and cried a little. My heart broke. I really wanted her to be a part of my big day. She understood, though. Let's move on to my wedding day. When I entered the venue, I loved how everything looked. It was beautiful. But as I looked around while walking inside, I was surprised to see both of her daughters and some of her nieces there. I stopped midway in shock. I had asked and tried to convince her to let at least our kids be at the wedding, and here I see all the kids and her family standing there all dressed up. I felt angry. This was a no-kids wedding, right? Then why were they there? I walked right back out. I could hear whispers behind me. It was mostly our family and friends, about 30 people. The doors of the venue shut. Her sister came out a minute later and asked me what happened. I asked why there were kids at the wedding. She grew nervous and tried to make an excuse, but I blew her off and walked away. I tried calling my fiancée because I wanted an answer, but I couldn't reach her. 10 minutes later, a car pulled up, and it was my fiancée. She smiled at me, confused. I was very angry at this point. I had seen the look on my daughter's face when I told her she couldn't attend. She was a part of me, and I loved her to death. I had still compromised for my fiancé. As she walked near me, I spat out, "Why are the kids at the wedding?" I could see the surprise on her face. I didn't get an answer. Everybody was out of the car and questioning what was going on. I asked her again, "Why are your daughters and nieces practically every child in your family at the venue? This is a no-kids wedding, right?" She started off saying she could explain. I waited. She told me that this was a last-minute decision since they had no one to watch them, so she let them come to the wedding. Can you believe her? I laughed in her face. I asked her if she thought I was a fool. I told her she knew how badly I wanted my daughter to be there, and she had insisted on this no-kids rule, and now she was telling me that this was a last-minute decision? I laughed in her face again. I asked her where she had managed to get matching dresses at the last moment. Her mother came up to me and asked me not to make a scene over such a small thing, and I lost it. I yelled at her to back off. I glared at her and asked how she would feel if her fiancé's daughters and nieces were all there at a no-kids wedding and her daughter wasn't. That shut her up. Her father didn't know what was going on. He asked his daughter about it, and she started tearing up. I was raging, though. I asked her if this is what she meant by starting a family. I told her my daughter seemed to be nowhere in there. She started saying that it was a mistake. She apologized and tried to hold my hand, but I stepped back. I told her this wasn't what I had envisioned when I proposed to her. I walked back inside and went up to the minister. I took the mic from him and announced myself. I told everyone there was a change in plans. She came running in at that moment. I announced that the wedding was off and made the reason very clear too. I explained to all of them exactly what had happened and why the wedding was canceled. She ran out in embarrassment. I was so angry after that. I walked out with my family behind me. I went back home with my best man, who was my best friend and the godfather to my daughter. He didn't say much but stood by me. He knew how I felt. Over the next few days, I had to sort out everything with all the people involved in the wedding arrangements. But the most important thing I had to do was explain to my daughter why the wedding didn't happen. When I got back home, I just hugged her and spent the whole day with her. She asked questions at first, but then she stopped and just played with me. I had packed all my fiancé's stuff and kept it outside. I didn't want to talk to her or interact with her. I know I could have handled the situation better, but at that point, all I could imagine was how much worse the treatment toward my daughter would get, and I was furious. I made a mistake by proposing to her. I should have waited longer. I was just so blinded by what could be that I didn't see what it was.